The year is 1967. A man is sitting in a dim office, lit only by the glow of his computer screen. Papers are piled high around him, filled with code names, numbers, and illegible scrawl. But believe it or not, it's just one of the many true stories that have come out of the FBI's top-secret experimental programs. They allow us to think, feel, and experience the world around us in ways that no other animal can. But they're also delicate and fragile, susceptible to damage and disease. That's why it's so important that we protect our brains and the information they hold. But what if there's more to this story than meets the eye? Chemtrails are a controversial topic, but there's evidence to suggest that they do exist. These are chemicals that are released into the air by planes that we can't see with the naked eye. Imagine that you're just trying to live your life. Consider the case of John Walker Lind, the American Taliban. After all, he had been in captivity for nearly 20 years. It's possible that the trauma of that experience simply overwhelmed his ability to remember specific details. These resources will give you a deeper understanding of the topics we covered in this video and help you to form your own opinion on the matter. Lind was one of the most high-profile prisoners at Guantanamo Bay, but he was released in 2020 and returned to the United States. For example, if enough people start to believe that Nelson Mandela died in the 1980s, it could eventually become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you want to learn more about the Mandela effect, we highly recommend checking out some of the resources provided below. People might start to act as if Mandela is dead, which could cause him to die. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. He worked on some of the Bureau's most high-profile cases involving organized crime, foreign intelligence, and experimental behavioral programs. On July 9, 1987, Griggs disappeared without a trace. He was last seen at his home in suburban Maryland. He had told his wife that he was going to run a quick errand before starting his new job in the FBI's Media Relations Department. But he never came home. His car was found, parked at a gas station near his home, but there was no sign of a struggle and no witnesses. The case went cold after a few months, and many people believed that Griggs had faked his own death. However, in September 1991, a storage unit in Toledo, Ohio was auctioned off. After its rental fees went unpaid for 17 months, the new renter found dozens of manila folders in the unit, along with handwritten journals, and a single black suitcase containing a preserved human hand. The journals contained cryptic codes and references to a psychological program that Griggs believed he had uncovered. He wrote about people who forgot where they worked and dreamed of buildings that didn't exist. He also wrote about a project he called Mirage 17, which involved experimental memory loop conditioning and underground isolation chambers. One journal page contained only a sentence: "If I disappear, it's because I finally remembered." The final piece of evidence was a VHS tape stored in a fireproof lockbox. It showed an interrogation room and what appeared to be Griggs sitting opposite an unseen interrogator. Over the course of 47 minutes, he weeps, laughs uncontrollably, and then violently claws at his own face while repeating, "This isn't my name. This isn't my time." The case is still officially labeled as missing under suspicious circumstances, and there are still many questions that remain unanswered. What happened to Griggs' body? What was the name of the psychological program he uncovered? And how did it work? To this day, no one knows what happened to Thomas J. Griggs. But the evidence in the storage unit suggests that he may have stumbled onto something that he was unsupposed to see. The most common example of the Mandela effect is people's false memories of Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. In reality, Mandela was released from prison in 1990 and lived until 2013. There are many theories as to why the Mandela effect occurs, but the most popular one is that it's a result of alternate universes colliding. Proponents of this theory believe that there are multiple universes that exist simultaneously, and that sometimes the barriers between them break down and people from different universes are able to interact with each other. This would explain why the Mandela effect only affects a small number of people. It's not that everyone is going crazy. It's just that some people are remembering events from alternate universes. However, his case does raise some interesting questions about the nature of memory and how easily it can be manipulated. Our memories are not as reliable as we think. They can be altered, distorted, and even erased without our knowledge. And while it might be easy to dismiss these ideas as conspiracy theories, the truth is that we can't be sure how much control the government actually has over our memories. When he arrived back in the US, Lind was greeted by a hero's welcome. He gave interviews, spoke at conferences, and even appeared on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. During his time in captivity, Lind gave little more than a handful of interviews, both to Western and Arab media. But once he was back in America, his memory seemed to be hazy at best. He couldn't remember much about his time in prison, and he seemed almost like a different person. Was this just the trauma of captivity catching up with him, or was there something more sinister at play? Some believe that Lindsay may have been a victim of memory manipulation. This would explain why he couldn't remember anything about his time in prison. It would also explain why he seemed so eager to please his captors, and why he seemed almost brainwashed. When he returned to the United States, while this may seem like a far-fetched theory, there's evidence to suggest that it could be true. The CIA has long been rumored to have experimented with mind control techniques, and there are reports that these experiments were carried out on prisoners in secret. You're going to work, paying your bills, and trying to make ends meet. You don't really think about the government much. You trust that they're looking out for you and that they have your best interests at heart. But what if that's not really the case? What if they've been erasing your memories this whole time? Once they're in the air, they can be dispersed over large areas of land, affecting everyone in the area. It's theorized that chemtrails could be used to control the weather, but they could also be used to control our minds. By controlling our exposure to certain chemicals, the government could potentially alter our moods or even our memories. Welcome to our channel, where today we'll be exploring how memories are being erased and controlled by those in power. If you could develop a device that could erase specific memories from people's minds, you would have ultimate control over them. You could make them forget things that might make them question your authority or even turn against you. With each passing minute, he feels a growing sense of dread. He has 23 hours left. If he doesn't complete his assignment, lives will be lost. But how can one man possibly remember every single thing he's learned over the last decade? How does the brain juggle an impossible number of details, facts and figures, languages and faces? Subliminal messages are bits of information that are presented to us below the threshold of our conscious awareness. We don't consciously see them, but our brains process them anyway. For example, if a news network was trying to hide something from us, they could broadcast a subliminal message during a commercial break that would make us forget that the break even happened. Or maybe you're re-watching TV and you start to get a bit suspicious of what you're re-seeing. Maybe you notice some inconsistencies in the footage, or maybe you just get the feeling that something is unright. Whatever it is, you try to change the channel but it's too late. The seed of doubt has already been planted and you can't stop thinking about it. It sounds like a scene straight out of a spy movie. There's no doubt that our brains are incredibly powerful organs. But what happens when that information is being weaponized against us? The idea that the government might be erasing our memories might sound like a far-fetched conspiracy theory. After all, we live in a time when everything we do is recorded and tracked. How could anyone erase a memory if it's always being documented? Well, it turns out that it's actually a lot easier than you might think. One way that the government could be erasing our memories is through subliminal messaging. Another way that the government could be controlling our memories is through... Finally, there's the possibility that the government is controlling
Now let's go back to the present. You might be thinking that this couldn't happen to you, but the truth is that you might already be a victim. Another possible explanation is that Lind was simply suffering from PTSD. It is hard to say whether or not Lind's case is a result of memory manipulation or simply PTSD. If you want to learn more about memory manipulation and the methods that the government might be using to control our memories, we highly recommend checking out some of the resources provided below. Have you ever heard of the Mandela effect? This is a phenomenon that occurs when a large group of people share a false memory of an event or detail. While the Mandela effect is a fascinating phenomenon, it's important to be aware of its potential dangers. The Mandela effect is a reminder that our memories are not always accurate, and that it is important to be critical of the information we receive. Thomas J. Griggs was a veteran FBI agent who specialized in counterintelligence. What do you think happened to Agent Thomas Griggs? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks a lot, guys. I hope you liked the story.